It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley as we move into a Monday. Gary, what do you know?
I had my microphone on and it went off.
All right.
I don't know how that happened.
I don't know.
It was on, I looked, and it was off. All right. Is there a ghost in here?
No.
How's everybody doing? Huh?
I don't know.
Psyched about the weekend? Did you have a good weekend? Everybody got their shopping done. We're 2 weeks.
Shopping for
Christmas. We're 2 weeks.
Oh. Is that coming up?
2 weeks from now.
All right.
2 weeks from right now.
I don't do that anymore, so
Yeah.
I don't know. None of my business.
Well, just, I'm encouraging people.
Yeah.
I just want people to be positive this time of the year.
Well, remember, there's only 54 shopping weeks until the next Christmas.
I'm like you. I don't have to do much shopping anymore. At all.
I don't really do much.
Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah. Great weekend.
Cool.
Yeah. You?
I think I'm Christmas music'd out.
Yeah. We took a drive in the country and which is something we like to do, and decided to do that at a time when we would see some Christmas lights out on country homes, and a lot of times they'll put them like along their fence.
Oh yeah,
and then the fence all the way up to the main house, where there are farms and ranches, and I love doing that. I've loved that all my life. It reminds me of when I was a kid, we'd have to travel to go see my grandparents, and my dad was Air Force, and so he would often want to drive at night because it was the most efficient way, really. He didn't have enough time to wait until the following morning and take off, so we often drove at night, and I loved that as a kid. And so we did some of that over the weekend, a couple of projects, and not much else.
I had fun.
Yeah.
Trans-Siberian on Friday, which
Right.
was really, really interesting. Well, number one, it was 80 degrees out. It's like, what in
Yeah.
the world? So it was a beautiful day, but they built in Fort Worth at the Dickies Arena.
Right.
And I was reading up on it. Did you see where Billboard has it as the number one venue, I think around 50, that holds about 15,000 people, number one venue to see a concert in the world. And the reason is apparently they built that thing with concerts in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And the acoustics and the sound system, it was unbelievable. I mean, Trans-Siberian's always good. They figured out how to make sound good, even if you don't have you've got a huge auditorium where acoustically you might not think it would sound good. I mean, they're really good at that.
Right.
But, I mean, I actually could hear the separation. When the Trans-Siberian sings, they have the singers come out and sing almost like a choir.
Mm-hmm.
You could hear the separation.
Yeah.
It was mind-boggling. And I'm like, that's really cool. So,
Good.
But overall, and then spent a lot of the day in Grapevine, Texas for their Christmas festival and another concert with the bluegrass band I talked about the other day. The Petersons are just awesome.
Yeah.
But it took me an hour to find a parking space.
Yeah. It's very the Grapevine Square area, the downtown area, is very small. They preserve it to be very small town-like, and that's the appeal. You kind of have to be used to that area to know where to go and when to go to get parking.
Yeah, well, you go to the convention center is what I didn't know.
Yeah. You usually, and if you're, just hitting the square, there's a couple of these smaller parking lots, near restaurants and stuff, that are really good, but you got to get there at the right time.
Yeah, you couldn't touch anything within, I'll say a quarter to a half mile.
Mm-hmm.
Every parking lot, everything.
Yeah.
And what you had to do was you go to the convention center that they have there, and then you park there and can walk or take the shuttle in. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So that was my fault. But other than that, we had an interesting. I mean, not we. Well, I guess you could say we, because I actually thought about calling you when I said I can't call him. We got a 3-day weekend. But when the charges came down for Hunter Biden, wow, because there's so many angles here. You know, the first thing you get is, oh, they're covering their posteriors now.
Right.
It's the first thing you thought about Weiss. Excuse me? All of these felonies now, you were going to let him walk?
Right.
On all of this?
Right.
And now all of a sudden it's like, okay, and that's the first thing that came to my mind, of course, my conspiracy theory mind.
Yeah, why now? And then, of course, the timing kind of plays out once you sit and think about it for a minute, right? The timing of it, really, with the GOP promising, to move on the impeachment inquiry officially, is then, okay, how much of the back and forth is now going to be stonewalled even greater? Well, we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to release that. And do they believe that they will have a harder time? Does the defense believe, does the Biden team, including the Hunter Biden team, believe that this will make it much tougher for the GOP? I guess we'll see.
I don't think so. I mean, I know that was written by quite a few people saying, well, they leave the president out of it in the indictment. Well, yeah.
You isolate the president. I think you highlight the president, as we've talked about before.
I thought it. Yeah, that's what I thought. I said,
right.
where are you coming from on this? It doesn't matter if the prosecutors, if Weiss is attempting to isolate or protect the president here by not making him a part of it.
Right.
Just itself by bringing the charges.
Right.
Shows that the Biden administration, the Biden's Justice Department, lays out, because you've laid out he illegally brought in this income because he didn't report it and everything else. Mm-hmm. And they mentioned the fact that it actually came from China and other places.
Right.
Yeah, but they left the president out. Yeah, but you're connecting the dots officially.
Right.
You connect the dots officially, where I looked at this and said, well, this is going to make Republicans' job a lot easier, because you saw no defense of Hunter Biden over the weekend. I didn't see anyone say, well, they haven't connected Joe yet. I didn't even see that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I got into thinking of it, and I thought, okay, what is it? To go all Donald Rumsfeld, there are the knowns, there are the unknowns, there are the known unknowns, and there are the unknown knowns. So I started thinking about, okay, what is it that there could be that I'm not thinking about? You know, I felt like an episode of Law and Order where I need to put a chart up, or some mob movie where I need to put a chart up of everybody on the chart, and here's the flow, but the flow of money and what might not be accessible to the GOP as a result of the charges. And there's plenty of stuff obviously we're not privy to, and I'm sure plenty of stuff that I still haven't considered. But I didn't see any analysis that really broke it down and said, okay, this is going to shut down the GOP. It may shut down the GOP as to what they can access based on Hunter's behavior.
Yes, yeah.
But that just isolates or highlights Joe, puts Joe in the spotlight. This is not about Hunter. It's about Joe. So the question then would be, all right, is there anything, any set of records or transactions that wouldn't be available to the GOP during an impeachment, official impeachment inquiry, where the court might say, well, you can't access this and you can't access that would cut them off for any kind of flow of money or behavior between, or money connections between Hunter and Joe. I couldn't think of any. It doesn't mean there aren't any.
Well, I think what it does. I mean, Hunter can take the fifth. He might have done that anyway. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it stops that. I don't think, because that's Hunter's trial. what's going on with Congress is completely separate from any possible trial that happens. So if they want things, if they have an official impeachment inquiry, which means they take a vote on it and they get it. And the other thing is now, I think it hurts, and I think Jonathan Turley pointed this out, will one Democrat sit there and now that 70%, think about this. Did you notice how everything's now 70% or past at this point now in a negative thing for Biden? 70% of Americans believe that something illegal or, immoral, some kind of corruption, whether it's legal corruption or illegal corruption, was done here, including 40% of Democrats, and it keeps going up. And that's the highest number. We talked about it last week. That's the highest number I've seen. It was between 60 and 67% for most, or actually probably between 59 and 67% is what you saw over the last month. This is the first time I've seen 70% of the public now believes that something was done wrong. You have those kind of numbers. Remember, this is as political as it is legal. I still don't know. And Turley saying an impeachment inquiry is simply to ask the questions. It's not an impeachment. And I saw that they plan on bringing Schwerin in January. So they could stretch this thing out and never even get to impeachment because the president may drop out. The president may, depending on what they get. I think the whole thing with Republicans, they look at it and say, we've got 70% of America says something stinks here. It's not going the opposite way. Let's continue to pound this along with everything else.
I, too, that it could hurt the Democrats with the whole two-tier justice system, that if it starts to look more and more like this move, these charges, newest charges against Hunter, were about trying to protect Joe or trying to keep the GOP from getting anything from that set of events, then you're going to have more and more independents that look at that and say, okay, here we have it, further proof. And it really, that's at the end of it all, it still has that feel of the two-tier judge. Because you ask yourself, why now? The GOP is getting closer. And as they get close, all this time, they didn't have this information against Hunter? Of course they did. They didn't have this evidence against Hunter?
Sure they did, yeah.
They had it all along.
That's why I thought, okay, they're covering their butt, or this is a last-ditch attempt to throw it all at Hunter and throw him under the bus.
Yeah, I thought about that, too.
In order to save the president. But as we talked about last week, you were at the point where the Democrats' fallback position is Hunter and the entire Biden family is corrupt except Joe.
Right. Yeah.
And now, officially, you have the Justice Department saying Hunter Biden committed these crimes. He evaded taxes. He got all this money in from foreign governments, and that's still wondering, well, wait a minute. You don't have, he hasn't registered as a foreign agent in here.
Right.
You don't have that. Why isn't that charge in here was one of the questions. But the fact is you've set up that Hunter was corrupt.
Yeah.
Officially corrupt and bringing this money in and attempting to evade taxes. We have all of the bank accounts. You have all of the LLCs that only existed to hide money to transfer into accounts that enrich the entire Biden family, which means the entire Biden family knew what Hunter was doing. They're all part of the corruption, and they were all selling influence or pretending to sell influence using Joe Biden because it was simply the illusion. This is where the media is on this.
Right.
It was simply the illusion of influence. Now, I haven't seen any editorial yet of a liberal newspaper. They're just being quiet on this.
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody defending Joe. I didn't see the illusion of influence. I'm waiting for that because that's where they would be officially then with this, is that everything here is the entire Biden family is corrupt.
Yeah.
And they all use Joe's name to enrich themselves by telling all these foreign governments and foreign adversaries that they could get Joe, that bribery would work and they could get Joe to do something for them. And Joe did nothing and knew nothing about it. So everybody in this loving family was screwing over Joe Biden is where they are right now. That's their fallback position.
Yeah.
That's very tough to believe.
Well, that's it. The more moves they make this way, the more attention they attract to themselves. That was the first thing that hit me. Why are you doing this now? Because this only brings that story to the surface for anyone who's not following it. You know, I mean, anybody who's been paying attention can probably put, connect all the dots and where this might be going. But here you are this late in the game, and you throw those charges down when you've had the evidence all along. Yep. Why now?
And it makes letting the statute of limitations run out on even more serious charges seem worse.
Exactly.
Like you're covering your butt.
Yep.
86690 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Electrical systems are one of the most common causes of winter breakdowns. So when your batteries talk, it's important you listen. Keep an eye out for the warning signs that may indicate your electrical system needs attention to help avoid getting stuck out in the cold this winter. The most obvious sign that a battery-related issue is present is if your truck has trouble cranking at the proper speed. If you experience any sluggishness when starting your engine, get a full electrical system check from a trusted service provider.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here just very quickly, because this breaking news in the last few hours, Trump is not going to testify in the civil trial.
Yeah, when I saw that yesterday, I thought, all right, that's probably good. I mean, obviously his attorneys have talked him out of doing that. It's not going to wouldn't actually help him much. And you and I were talking during the break just now. The judge has done so much damage to the prosecution's case. Just kind of let that work for you in getting you to the appeals process.
It's interesting because I saw that James was saying, well, all the witnesses that said Trump did nothing wrong actually helped our case. Because they, for example, where he, put down what the evaluation was, they said doesn't matter what the evaluation was in there because it doesn't mean anything. Said, see, that shows it's fraud.
Right.
It's like, well, no, it's not business fraud. There's no accounting principles that it violates at all. Well, that shows it's fraud. And I'm thinking to myself, wow. And I saw that the one accountant who testified, the judge says, are you telling me there's nothing done wrong? There was nothing wrong done here? He goes, no, there was absolutely nothing done wrong here. And he goes, oh. And I'm thinking to myself at that particular point, all right, this law, I don't see how this law isn't unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't see how it's not unconstitutional, because you're talking about appraisal numbers where there's a disclaimer in it that says, because that's what we found out. The disclaimer that Trump talked about apparently was true.
Right.
Well, this is a number out there, but it's just, again, it's an estimate of what we believe. We're not saying this is the actual value of it. And they're going, that's fraud. I don't see how you can make a law on appraisals or evaluations like that can take away somebody's business as they're trying to do.
The number one rule in underwriting or in writing any policy, because that's what it was, that's what the prosecution is saying, getting him favor with lenders and insurance companies, is to do your due diligence. And he even had a disclaimer. I just don't see how this doesn't go his way in appeals.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I haven't said this often, but smart move, legal move by Trump not to testify.
Yeah, look, we said during his presidency that he talks to the media sometimes to a fault. He doesn't shy away from any questions. Well, it's a very different setting when you're in a courtroom and you're being charged with something, and taking the stand in defense of yourself is it's a massive risk, regardless of who you are and what you're being challenged with. In this case, everything right now is working against prosecution, and that includes the weak case and all the actions by the judge up to this point. And it's, I would think, so much easier, certainly a lot less risky, to just wait for the inevitable to happen, and that's for this thing to go to appeal. And it's going to. There's no way it's not. The judge is just, I mean, from the beginning, we go back to the Michael Flynn case and Judge Sullivan. We thought that was bizarre. And certain things that Sullivan said may have been more bizarre, but in terms of tanking a case for the prosecution, I haven't seen anything like this judge in this case. And that's on top of the weak case that this is.
When you think of Trump testifying, the judge has already found him guilty.
Yeah.
It's just this trial was about how guilty and what the punishment should be.
Right.
And it didn't matter, as, when you saw James stating that, well, all of Trump's witnesses proved that he committed fraud because he wasn't telling the truth.
Yeah.
And what the truth is his appraisal of properties versus what the judge thinks the appraisal of the property should be.
Right.
Am I wrong there?
No, that's basically it.
Right. That's and on the Mar-a-Lago thing, the judge was so far off. I mean, you had people that are involved in commercial real estate say the judge is so far off, it's ridiculous.
Right.
So you're talking about estimates and appraisals that the president, according to the reporting from the court, that the evidence shows that Trump actually put it, I don't think it's needed, but put a disclaimer in there that these things were simply estimates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in no way was he saying this is the actual appraisal. If he said, I got this appraised and this was the appraisal and he was lying on that, then you could get him.
Right.
But he wasn't doing that.
Right. Because that would be, if you were talking about any kind of bank appraisal, well, that's bank fraud. If you took a form and then signed a form and saying that I have an appraisal that says this when it's not true.
Right. That would be fraud.
That's fraud. And
right.
That law is very clear. That's not what happened.
And so the only thing it could do by him testifying, I think, is hurt himself in the case and politically by, I don't know, saying something, whatever. By saying something, it could hurt him. I'd be looking at this going, okay, you got a big lead here going into the primaries. Don't blow it.
Well, yeah, look, the case is so loose coming from the prosecution side that and he would be really a star witness, not for the prosecution, obviously for the defense, but he would be a star witness. It would be highlighted. It's what would get all the media attention. Anything that he said on the stand would get coverage all the way to the end. And that, with the prosecution's case being so loose and weak, the last thing you want to do is help her actually build a bigger case against you. Or you get on the stand and then all of a sudden this judge decides, well, you're in contempt because you lied under oath on the stand, because I don't see it that way. You keep saying Mar-a-Lago is worth whatever, and I'm saying, no, it's not, and I'm just going to charge you with contempt of court for lying under oath. And, I mean, it's so loose right now from both the judge and prosecution that's what I think would drive me the most to advise him, don't get on that stand, because there's no telling what they would try and throw at you, which may not be justified anyway, but tell me how much of this is to begin with.
Yeah, I guess neither of us talking about what's justified or what's not. It's based on this what I consider an unconstitutional law.
Right.
If this is how they enforce this law, it's unconstitutional.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't see how it's not. And the other thing I'm thinking of is, who wants to do commercial real estate business in New York anymore if this law exists and is applied the way that it's applied? Because then they can pick and choose who they wish to prosecute for fraud that's not really fraud.
Right.
It's not fraud the way that we have known fraud to be.
Yeah, you want to see the Empire State become the I don't know, the tourism state? I don't know what it would become if major businesses decided, we can't do this because we have a risk here. Because this wouldn't apply to just, if they're willing to go after Trump, a guy who puts his name on the side of everything he builds and makes and owns, they'll come after every business large. If they get away with this, there's no telling how many different businesses that they would go after.
I haven't seen this covered enough, the actual charges and comparing it to fraud.
Yeah, I haven't either.
I have not seen a great deal of analysis on, that how Trump could appeal this. I have seen the fact that basically the death sentence is, the thing. Even if it was upheld in federal court, that they would look at it and go, well, the death sentence, you would have to lower the amount, of damages.
Right. Maybe, to a fine or whatever, but you don't just take them and sell all of his businesses.
Right. You don't dissolve the businesses based on something like
then
this.
Banish him from the state, essentially.
Right. Even though he may want to go anyway.
He just might.
I wouldn't want to stick around.
I kind of laughed. I said to you, I think off the air one time, I said, when this whole thing is over, I mean, look, it's quite possible he sells Mar-a-Lago. Can you imagine him selling Mar-a-Lago for, 20, 30 times what the judge said that it's worth, which is, I haven't assessed it myself, but you look at the real estate community's reaction to the judge's assessment of that, that tiny amount. And then it could be that one day that, he's done doing business in New York just naturally, or just decides that's not going to be, the base of all of his industries. But the fact of the matter is that if this were to be upheld, if this goes through and this sticks, this will crush business in New York.
Who can't they get for fraud then?
It's anybody and everybody then. It's anybody and everybody. And that would be my fear, because the fear inside every corporation, large and small, is compliance or non-compliance, that you are out of compliance on anything and everything. It's all about compliance. And if there is anything that is this broad and loose, that's just dangling right outside your front door as a business, you need to pick up and move, because you can't have that kind of risk. Then tell me, if you're a publicly traded company, who would want to invest in your company knowing that risk? Who's going to want to back your company? Who's going to want to do business with your company if they think, and this is what we've talked about for years. There are massive corporations, and they do, and Walmart included, that does business with thousands of other smaller businesses. Well, who's going to want to do that if they think you're going to be gone. This is one of the things that happened with Yellow Freight when the threat of the strike. And again, I put a lot of the failure of Yellow Freight on management at Yellow Freight over the years. But when customers heard that there could be a strike by the Teamsters, they wanted to make sure that their deliveries were going to happen with such a massive company. So they just went elsewhere. They just fled. Well, if this were to be sitting there, if this sticks and isn't overturned and they're successful in getting Donald Trump, then tell me what business, large or small, would want to do business in New York State.
Well, how does this affect? Because I don't think this fraud law just applies to commercial real estate.
No.
The fraud law would apply. This is why I wish it was covered more by legal experts, because, again, when it comes to commercial real estate, well, look, I know what fraud is.
Mm-hmm.
I know what fraud, and that's why I've always given the example of the appraisal process that we all go through with our counties.
Yeah.
When it comes to protesting our taxes. Well, if you protest your taxes and you say my property's worth this, and you put it on a piece of paper, and the appraisal group doesn't agree with you, and they come back and say, no, this is what it is, can you be charged with fraud for putting down on paper what the appraisal district didn't agree with you with?
Under the spirit of this prosecution in New York, the answer is yes. They could come after you for challenging, and there are plenty of people across the nation that do that on a regular basis. Look, my property's not as worth as much as you say it is, and here's why. And you try, and then all of a sudden, that could be fraudulent in nature because you're saying something. Well, what you're trying to do, keep in mind, what the Attorney General for the state of New York is alleging is that he was trying to gain favor with banks or insurance companies on rates and terms by falsifying records, by not even falsifying records, which, by the way, would be illegal if you could prove direct fraud, as we mentioned, but just by saying this and this is my assessment and that's my assessment and putting a disclaimer there, because every institution has a team of underwriters. They all look at this and say, and their job is to assess the risk at every single turn. And there are some people that get turned down just because the underwriter that day just doesn't feel the risk. Well, and it could be on any other day, could be a worthy risk for them, for that institution to take.
And the last time I protested my taxes, the amount that I put in was so I could get a more favorable rate on my property taxes.
Right. That's my point, is that you were just looking to get a more favorable rate on your property taxes, and you were falsely, well, it's not falsely, that was your assessment.
Right.
And they don't have to give him a loan or anyone else a loan or cooperate with you during that process, do they? No, it's not required of them. There were no victims.
None.
In this case. None.
They couldn't find one.
No, they couldn't.
Just bizarre.
It is.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up here, we'll hit the impeachment inquiry. Vote should be this week. See that report? 5,000 illegal immigrants are released into the U.S. daily.
Yeah.
The Biden administration privately has told Congress.
Yeah.
5,000 a day. Did you see, the liberal senator on Meet the Press yesterday? You're not going to win this. And it's the whole thing with Republicans stating, you want money for Ukraine? You want money for Israel? Well, then you make sure we do border security here.
Right.
If you're not going to do it, you're not going to get the money. And they're trying to say, oh, the Republicans are playing games here. No, you're playing games.
Yeah.
Because you can easily turn that around. It's very easy for Republicans to say it is more important for the Democrat, because it's true.
Yep.
It's more important for the Democrats to have open borders than to fund Israel and Ukraine that they claim to care about. That's an easy one.
Right.
The border's insane. Fix it.
Right.
No, we won't. And if you won't give us money for Ukraine and Israel, then you don't care.
Right.
That's a tough sell.
You're not going to win it.
No.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. You were just having a conversation. You were telling me that everything, you think about it right now, everything, just pointing out how radical liberalism in the Democratic Party is right now.
You know, it's and it seems to be imploding by the second. With the Penn President stepping down over the weekend, I didn't see how she was actually going to survive that. And I thought to myself, well, you know, there are radicals out there, and so, you know, it's quite possible that on Saturday, her resigning, and we'll see what happens at MIT and at Harvard. You know, there's the Stefanik is, I think she posted something over the weekend, something to the effect, one down and more to go, or two more to go, or whatever it is. And we'll see where that goes. But it's something that you and I touched on. We had a segment last week or week before talking about in society. You know, we've always had radicals. The radicals, though, have been so loud here lately and so over-the-top radical, trying to make themselves mainstream, which is impossible. You can't do that. It is rejected as a whole by society. But it still doesn't send them away. Still over the weekend, you had these radicals on university campuses chanting, "We are Hamas." It went from "We are Cecil." Remember the dentist that shot the lion?
Yes.
And Cecil the lion. We went from "We are Cecil" to "We are Hamas," that we side with terrorists. Imagine after 9/11 that you had on campuses all over America, "We are Al-Qaeda, we are Al-Qaeda." Now, you did have a few Americans that did side with terrorists and actually went into terrorist mode. That's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about these liberal whiners who believe they're on the right side and they're as radical as you get. Then you know the EVs. Tesla came out the other day and announced that they're sharing their 48-volt architecture with other OEMs, including their competitors. And they, you know, the claim over the weekend was, look, that wasn't really their design, but, well, it's what they say, Tesla says, believes, though it'll move the EV industry forward. I don't know. We'll see, I guess. But then the Cybertruck thing and all of the stuff that's imploding on EVs. and then wind power and solar, and how everything on the leftist agenda plate is seemingly imploding in a matter of weeks, if not a couple of months.
Democrats believing, what's his name from Connecticut? I can't think of the senator's name. On Meet the Press yesterday, promoting the fact that it's horrible what Republicans are doing by not supporting Israel and Ukraine and making it political with wanting to bring in the border.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because when you look at what's going on in Israel and what happened,
right,
and you see the open border that we have here, because at the same time that he was talking about it, you've got the report that the White House is secretly telling Congress 5,000 people are getting into this country every single day.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah. And it's just over and over again. Everything on their plate is just imploding. And look, inflation right now is a big part of it, which points to the spending that they have done over and over again. And this is where it goes. I mean, everything right now is so costly. I saw a number of you had a big music weekend in our area. There was a local story about how many music venues are shutting down. Now, a handful of those are, have only been around a few years. And in one zone, which is a kind of a live music zone, or has been, nightclub live music zone, and has been for, I don't know, since I was very, very young. That area is always, venues are always coming and going. They're changing. Mm-hmm. But when you ask the owners of these venues what's going on, it's inflation and then the cost of rent, which is also inflation. Then you see another story that came out of our area. All these commercial buildings now, they're going to try and convert them into living spaces. Well, who's going to be able to afford them? No, tell me who's going to be able to afford them.
It was Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut,
yeah,
who's trying to make the case, and it's like, dude, you're not going to win this one.
You're not.
Because the reverse is that open borders is more important to you than funding the Ukraine war,
right?
Funding Ukraine and funding Israel,
right?
You're not going to win that one.
You're not going to win it. You're not going to win it.
Because that's an easy one. Now, the question that you and I have is, number one, how are the Republicans going to ensure that if they put more money to secure the border, that the Biden administration's actually going to use it for that and not use the money for, other things?
Right.
How do we know that?
Right.
What is the guarantee that we can get, or as close as you can get to a guarantee? And Republicans they're not saying. They're not publicizing that.
Right.
They're not promoting that as we believe they should, because we've already got the laws to shut down the border. So why do we need more money would be my next question for Republicans.
Right. Yeah, but they could sit on that money and do nothing with it, or they could send it somewhere else and say it's protecting the border. They could use it to do a study on the horned frog in Texas and its impact on the border.
Well, we're taking the money and sending it to foreign countries in order to support and subsidize their people, so it takes the root cause of them moving, coming to the United States.
Yes.
And by the way, that whole the bunch of propaganda that the media was promoting. Remember a couple of weeks ago? Well, you know something. A lot of these migrants want to go back because they're not getting what they want.
Yeah.
It's like, shut up.
Yeah.
And now you saw yesterday 5,000 a day, and it was Bill Malugin who said when he was at the Arizona border last week at that one location they're all coming through, the consensus is we're going to New York City.
Yep.
So it's getting worse in New York City. Because that was the consensus on the majority of those crossing the border. We're going to New York City.
Right.
That's where we want to go.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you live somewhere else in the world and you've always wanted to come to the U.S., the party in control of the White House, in fact, that particular president has said it repeatedly. He's inviting you to come here. It's easy to get in. You can claim asylum just by saying the word asylum. And then you can pretty much get a ride to wherever you want to go. And if you want to go to New York City, you can get there. All of it starts and ends with the border. All of it is about border security. And you look at what's going on right now. And by the way, reading more about Mayor Adams in New York City, something that I felt for a while that he's not going to be a two-term, he's not going to be a multiple-term mayor of New York City, but his approval numbers are just in the toilet. And, or as they call it in San Francisco, sidewalk. And it's just horrible right now. And you also saw the story over the weekend where he had to admit, where he said, help's not coming. At the whole thing, the whole appealing to D.C. for help was wasted time. Help's not coming. And he's right. It never was, though. And then what was the tour that he did? What they call the tour? Where he just goes on this world tour. Don't go to look, Frank Sinatra's a liar.
And it had the opposite effect.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what he's saying is, go to New York.
Well, did you see who is the most favored person to take his place? Cuomo.
Yeah, I could see that.
That came out over the week.
That
came out over the weekend.
Yeah.
That from what they're thinking of, the people want Cuomo.
Yeah.
He did such a great job as governor that they want him in New York City.
Right.
I mean, it's just and one thing I noticed this weekend, it seemed like everything, when you look at the polling now, everything now negative against what Biden is doing is roughly around 70%.
Right.
You saw that, now with, I think it was the Wall Street Journal poll that came out with his approval rating. There's no president in modern history that has had such low polling numbers at this particular point. But on the specific issues now, 7 in 10 disapproving of the President Biden's handling of inflation. 76% of those polled say they can't keep up with inflation. Doesn't matter whether, and it was said they're working. We warned the Democrats on this.
Yeah.
They didn't listen.
No.
Everybody warned Biden. The Obama administration economists warned Biden.
Yep.
Don't do this. We said you're going down the wrong path. Don't you understand? Inflation is worse than a recession.
Yep.
Because inflation affects everybody who is working. And now at this time in history, because we don't have the labor force, we don't have women coming into the workforce like they used to.
Nope.
And we don't have, the baby boom is done, as we saw. And now we don't have enough people. So the Biden administration was sitting there, well, look at unemployment, look at unemployment, look at unemployment. And the population screaming back, that's because there's no labor force, and I've got a job, and I can't keep up. It's not that I lost my job and can't keep up. I can't keep up, and I have a job. I got a second job. I still can't keep up. Unemployment's low. See, you're getting to work 2 jobs. Aren't you lucky? That's the opportunities that exist, but I can't keep up. And they just were completely tone deaf to inflation and still are.
Saw a CNN article that pointed to interest rates starting to drop, or the Fed starting to lower interest rates as early as March. A 44% chance is the market consensus right now that they'll start dropping the interest rates. I'm sorry, did we forget about inflation? And this idea, where these analysts go, well, we need to stop it with a 2% target rate. It needs to be 3%. Well, why not 4%? These elitists who sit around and really don't deal with it, or don't have to deal with it the same way that the average American does, the lower and middle class does, where you're scratching your head going, Christmas? I haven't thought about Christmas. I'm thinking about my light bill. I'm thinking about being able to heat my home. I'm thinking about being able to feed my kids. When they sit there and then, well, we need to this is going to be the new normal. You need to stop talking. I don't doubt, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Jerome Powell came in and started lowering rates in March, because I've been saying all along, he's not serious about inflation. He doesn't care.
Well, I think one of the reasons that the market's looking at it that way is they believe there's a recession coming.
Yeah. Well, that's it. But here's the question. If CNN is right, and these rates start as early as March, then the analysts have to believe that, and there's one of two things, because there are two different thoughts here. One is that they see the signs, clear signs of the recession, or they try and get ahead of it and maneuver some kind of soft landing, and that seems to be, the latter seems to be the growing consensus. Well, we can just keep ourselves from getting there. If you don't get serious about inflation, if the overwhelming majority of Americans can't make ends meet, and you're worried about a soft landing, he's worried. Jerome Powell's worried about a November 5th landing. That's what he's worried about. And being blamed for something if Biden doesn't pull it off on November 5th. That's what he's worried about. Because if they start it in March, that's what the game is going to be. Try and give the president a soft landing so he's not standing there in Chicago with Mayor Brandon and President Brandon waving to everybody like nothing is wrong and we're in a recession.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Surviving and thriving as an owner-operator has just as much to do with managing costs as it does with generating revenue. Understanding basic principles of operating costs can save you thousands of dollars a year. Costs are not the same each month. If 9,600 miles are driven one month and 10,000 miles the next, two different sets of costs apply for each month. For example, if your tractor payment is $1,850 per month and you drive 9,600 miles in the month, your tractor payment is costing you 19.3 cents per mile. Drive 10,000 miles, though, and that same payment will cost you 18.5 cents per mile. This is one of your major fixed costs while paying off a truck loan. The difference in this example is only a fraction of a cent, which may seem like small change, but it ultimately amounts to $960 more annually on the bottom line. Because though fixed costs do not go down over time, you can reduce your cost per mile with more paid miles. Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. But that's one thing I noticed, all the 70% disapproval of what the president's doing. Think about that. Do you ever remember any president when the numbers were so low? Especially when you tie them to the particular issue.
No.
I mean, again, the approval rating is extremely low, the lowest in modern history. That's what came out over the weekend. But on the actual issues, I've never seen them this low. And so we'll get to more of that coming up. Plus, the charges against Hunter Biden and an impeachment inquiry, the politics of that, the reality of it, plus the politics of it as the may be looking this week for an impeachment inquiry vote, which, by the way, perfectly timed when you think about it.
Yeah.
You heard Hunter Biden came out just railing against everybody.
Yeah.
Just going absolutely crazy that he's innocent. How does the president take any questions
on anything?
On anything?
No, I mean, that's what we were talking about. First of all, you can't trust him in front of the media. So, his ramblings, that's just something he's just incoherent. But then if you start asking him about something, especially with Hunter and all that stuff. There's no telling at this point. He could just start going off. You know, it's like almost like a Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're damn right I ordered the code red. I expect him to kind of do that all of a sudden in front of the media. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I took money. Yeah. How do you think all this works? You know?
I have no idea what you said, but it sounded good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's perfect Biden then. Thank you.
Call in and get a word in edgewise. Eric Harley and Gary McNamara on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. There's too much to talk about.
No.
I've been talking with you, and
We'll just continue during the break.
and we're coming back. I'm like, I don't know where to go.
Yeah, you guys missed a really great segment during the break. Sorry about that, but we're not going to repeat it. That's
No, but we were just talking because it's just a general outline of what both you and I noticed over the weekend, and part of it was based on the number of polls out there showing it looks like on so many issues negatively for the president and for Democrats, it's reached 70% against. And you look at that, and that is just pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And you ask, and the question to be asked is, are we at that spot where Americans now have realized that and I won't say liberalism, because this is specifically on Democrats, where Democrats have led us. And you look at the situation at the border, which is insanity, pure insanity.
Yeah.
You look at EVs, which have just crumbled, over the last month. You think about last week, and you think about those presidents of Harvard, University of Pennsylvania. She's the first one to resign. You think she can get her to testify against Biden? But you've got University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, and MIT. And the answering there, where it was like pulling teeth. It was simply, is it against your code? Is it against your basically the handbook code of a university to call for the genocide of Jews? Well, it depends on the context. And then SNL, did you see SNL? They only watched like the first couple of minutes of it, but they did a thing, parroting that happening. And what they tried to do was make an idiot of Stefanik answering the questions.
right. Yeah.
It wasn't so much that they couldn't answer the simple question. It was making fun of her and way over-exaggerating the points that she was trying to make, because the points were Stefanik. And I know that, we've talked about this before. Boebert and Green, they can go over the top at times.
Right.
Stefanik normally doesn't.
Right.
And when she's outraged, there's something to be outraged about. And, to be outraged about the fact that 3 major university presidents viewed as some of the most elite and best institutions in the United States of higher education. They're not, by the way. But that's the claim, and that's the reputation. Could not answer a question like, is it against the policy of your school?
Right.
To call for the genocide of Jews. Nobody could say yes.
Right.
And that showed you the insanity there. Even what we're getting now, the whole Hunter Biden thing, where you see 70% of the people believe that Joe Biden is involved in it and is corrupt.
Right.
Because corruption, as Jonathan Turley's pointed out, influence peddling is viewed as corruption.
Yeah.
Even if it's not illegal.
Yeah.
But now you've jumped to the part of where and we'll get to more of this, the specifics of the charges coming up following the top of the hour. But just in general across the board, it's almost as if, have they finally had enough?
Mm. Yeah, right. And I think because the arrogance is especially insulting when, and a lot of this, was really ramped up during COVID when you had Newsom. You need to wear a mask and socially distance as he's laughing with all of his friends at a dinner party. Closing businesses. Oh, except his vineyard. And, and then the selfie that he took with arguably one of the most famous HIV patients in the world, Magic Johnson, and that whole thing. When people are trying to deal with making ends meet, and then they're being told over and over again, none of this matters. What it sounds like is none of this applies to me. That's you guys. You ketchup eaters need to go figure out the whole inflation thing. And over and over again at every turn. Inflation and the border. You may think, okay, well, those are two different topics. Not really. Because New York City's scrambling to try and house people. Wait a minute. I'm scrambling to house me. Anything you look at, national security. Well, it's very unsettling and disconcerting, especially if you're a parent. You're trying to keep a roof over your head. You're trying to keep your kids safe. You're trying to keep them fed. And nobody cares about national security. Now, after October 7th, it's in the top of mind of everybody. Wait a minute. They're saying that the enemy is crossing the southern border, and they're still not doing anything about it. And my own personal security, with the rise in crime in my neighborhood, and the fact that I'm trying to make ends meet and I'm not able to do it over and over again, is an insult. And that's why I think you're seeing this implosion. That's why I think you're seeing these things where, look, stop it with it. We saw the rest of the world on renewables, on renewable energy. We can't do this. We need to go back to coal. We can't do this because people are suffering. And with EVs and wind and solar and all this, you're forcing it down our throats. You're forcing us to pay even more for something we already can't afford. And it needs to stop. That's where we are as a nation. And these radicals screaming on campuses, I am Hamas. Well, then you're the enemy. And if you're Hamas, go to war. Let's see you go to Gaza and try and fight. Is that what you mean? Or are you just acting like a child once again because you've never been expected to grow up because we never put standards on these kids as they muddled their way through the public school system? That's a disaster in and of itself.
But you saw the insanity and the reaction of these college presidents, even from, Democrats. And I saw Elizabeth Warren was on CNBC. And he said, but this is coming from liberalism. Oh, I don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see it's coming from. Well, of course it's coming from liberalism. Yeah. We told you where it's coming from.
Right.
Look, there's no secret. It comes from identity politics.
Right.
It comes from judging people as groups, not individuals.
Yep.
As we have stated across the board over and over and over again. And that's what the Democrats and liberals are doing with Jews. They started out, as we've said, the modern identity politics began with the racism and bigotry towards blacks, conservative blacks.
Yeah.
Oh, they're not really black. And then you saw it during the summer of 2020. Well, cops, if you're black and you're a cop, you're really not black.
Right.
You're blue.
Right.
Whatever the hell that means.
Whatever the hell that means.
And so you saw it, and all of a sudden they're surprised. It came, and this is where I can't think of the host on CNBC. His name just popped out of my head. That's where he look and go, excuse me. And some Republican needs to say it, because I haven't heard one Republican state this. Not one. The Democratic Party has endorsed identity politics. They judge people by groups, not individuals. They simply added the Jews.
Yep.
That's all they did.
Yep.
And it's immoral. It's wrong. It's Neanderthal thinking. You judge people as individuals, and they have been doing this now, identity politics, and bring up the modern identity politics where it started. Judging blacks who said, no, I'm conservative. No, I'm Republican. Well, then you're not really black. All blacks must think alike. And then that morphs into, as we know, the modern Kendi anti-racism, which is actually racism.
Mm-hmm. As we've been saying for years.
Right. And critical race theory that, well, all whites are basically culturally racist to the point where it might as well be in their DNA. And so we must structure society as if all white people are racist. And now that's falling apart. It's all falling apart because it's not true.
And we're seeing again, also, as we've said, on every front, every time they scream bigotry and racism, it's because it's how they think.
It's how they think.
There can be no doubt in your mind now, because if you don't see that about the left, about the fact that everything they do is based in their hatred and their bigotry and their racism, then you're not looking, because after October 7th, it should be plainly obvious. Maybe not all of them, the rank and file, are as radical as the ones you see on campus, but the party itself is steeped in bigotry and racism, and they have been for ages.
Think about this. The presidents of MIT, University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard. And they could not make the point. These are just a few radicals on the campus. Mm-hmm. The radicals are the presidents. They
proved it. They were practically smirking as they defended their own bigotry.
Yeah. And they are such in the bubble of liberalism. There was no type of self-awareness
None.
as to how the general population, they had no idea. They walked into that having no idea or having any self-awareness of how Congress was going to react to their answers.
Right.
None. This is how radical they are, and this is the bubble that they're in.
Yep.
Understand that.
Yep.
And it's not just the radical. There's a few radical students. It's the administration. It goes right up to the president of these universities.
Yep.
Well, genocide of Jews? Well, it all depends on the context.
Yeah.
Well, only if it's put into action.
As long as they don't act on it.
Oh, so you'd object to it. It'd be against your code of conduct if they actually started committing a genocide of Jews.
Right.
I mean,
that's how bizarre. That was actually what she was saying.
I know.
So
it was the most bizarre.
SNL, horrible try in trying to be radical in the way that you positioned Stefanik in that equation, but you got nothing on the true radicals that exist at these universities and lead these universities.
Right.
You got nothing. You're amateurs.
The radicals, it's obvious. They proved it to us in their own words.
Yep.
The radicals are the management of the administration of these colleges.
Yep.
Yeah, let's pay for all those kids' colleges.
Right.
You need to pay. You need to pay for these kids' education.
Mm-hmm.
This is what they're being taught.
Yep. As I said last week, for the alumni, not one more dime. And we saw it happen.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. I don't think in my time of covering politics, which is now 40 years, and even going back before that, I don't ever remember polling numbers. Maybe they were for Jimmy Carter on some things like inflation back then, but I don't remember across the board on so many issues where you see, because that to me is what I noticed over the weekend, that 70% mark being hit on so many of the issues when it comes to the president, which those issues, by the way, relate to the Democrats.
Right.
Because the president it has full support of the Democratic Party. And you and I talked about, you were saying, wow, was the debate between Newsom and DeSantis an indicator of just how tough it is for Democrats to promote what they believe? And you and I looked at the election for Houston mayor, where Sheila Jackson Lee lost to a moderate Democrat who has, actually aligned himself with Republicans at times on many issues.
Right.
Lost by almost 30 points. Sheila Jackson Lee in Houston losing by 30 points for the mayoral election in Houston.
Yeah, that you don't get greater name recognition for it as a Democrat in Texas.
No, you do not. No, you don't.
And it meant nothing. And that was kind of my point on the whole debate with Newsom and DeSantis, and that is, where do you go, even with name recognition, even the strongest players in the Democratic Party? What do you do? What do you promote? How do you defend the radicals that are such a big part of your party?
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So looking here about whether we have an impeachment inquiry this week, just reading Jonathan Turley in thehill.com. With Hunter's indictment, Democrats face a moment of maddening truth. And you go, the vote for a impeachment inquiry is not whether to impeach President Biden, but whether members support the investigation into these growing allegations of corruption by the Biden family. According to the recent polling, nearly 70% of voters and 40% of Democrats believe that Biden has acted unlawfully or unethically or both. Yet with almost half of the Democratic Party viewing Biden's conduct as worthy of an investigation, it is not clear whether a single Democratic member will vote to look into these allegations. In September, I testified at the first impeachment inquiry hearing and stated that the evidence had clearly passed the threshold for such an inquiry. While there was no requirement to hold a formal vote to start the process, as the Democrats did with Trump, I encouraged its members to hold such a vote. It is now, let me just, what's going on here? What's happened to it? Such a vote. It is now clear that the president lied, denying that his son never made money in China. The indictment confirms massive transfers from Chinese sources. It is also clear that Hunter was engaged in raw influence peddling. This included threatening at least one Chinese businessman that his father was sitting next to him and would retaliate against him if he did not send millions to the Bidens. President Biden also lied when he claimed this week, which was last week, that he had not had any interactions with his son's business associates. There are emails, audio tapes, and testimony now disproving that claim. Millions of dollars flowed to the Biden family members through a labyrinth of shell companies and accounts. Hunter Biden sent emails saying that up to half of his income went to his father while they used shared accounts and credit cards for expenses. Even Biden associates now admit that they were selling the Biden brand and influence with Joe Biden. Joe Biden supporters simply argue that they were merely selling the influence of illusion. Yeah. And that's where we get to the point of where the Democrats now are and where the media is now. If you say that now, that it was just selling the illusion of influence, that means that everyone, that Joe didn't know that they were doing this.
Yeah, right.
That Joe was completely innocent, had no idea what his son or his entire family was doing to him. Because Democrats now, this is their last position. Democrats, by stating that, are communicating that the entire Biden family is corrupt. Because they all received money and knew where the money was coming from. Yeah. Money just doesn't appear into your account where'd this come from? Well, Hunter and his businesses. Well, now we know that the Department of Justice under Joe Biden says Hunter Biden broke the law. He was evading taxes.
Right.
The supporters of the president say, well, Hunter and everybody else that got money were all involved in a conspiracy. By the way, would this be a conspiracy to defraud the president or to defraud Joe Biden? They were all involved in lying and agreeing that Hunter and Jim should lie to all these foreign actors and tell them they can get the president to do something, thereby then opening up all these bank accounts and all of these different LLCs to move millions of dollars to members of the Biden family. So everyone in the family was involved in ripping off Joe, and Joe had no idea that any of this was ever going on. He was completely innocent. You wonder why 70% don't believe it. That's why it's not believable.
It's, again, it's the number one rule in things like this: deny, 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 deny. But the problem is the nature of their denials keeps changing. We said from the beginning, don't go full measure and say, I knew absolutely nothing about my son's businesses. I'm aware that my son does business. I don't participate in that business. So if you have any other questions about it, I suggest you ask him. Visitation is on Sunday. Oh, wait, I get ahead of myself. These are the things that start to look immediately like there's something wrong. We have this instinct thing where you look at it and go, well, wait a minute, you know nothing about it? You know nothing about it? And they stood that line for the longest time, and now it's, well, no, he knows, something about it, but he didn't know, really what was going. I mean, they were doing things, and he wasn't a part of it. I mean, it's poor Joe. It's poor Joe. It's poor Joe. His family was, his family there. But by the way, I absolutely would not be surprised if at the end of it all, Joe Biden himself steps up to a podium. Man, my family are a bunch of scumbags, aren't they? Wow. Look at the wool they tried to pull over my eyes. I mean,
well, I saw this in Real Clear Politics from American Greatness, Roger Kimball. The son of a gun, number one son, might just toss Pops under the bus.
Well, there's there's the question. I thought about that too over the weekend. Who's going to be the first? Who's going to be the first, Hunter or Joe, to throw the other one under the bus? Frankly, if I were James, I'd want to be first.
Well, what
were the brother?
What I wonder is, did Weiss want to remain in here because he needed to save himself? That he realized after the debacle happened, that he just didn't walk away.
There's an interesting.
Did he stay with it because he wants to reclaim his reputation and therefore his ability to make money in the future? That if it would have ended there and he would have been gone, it would have looked so bad for him.
Well, did he think, the GOP is going to find all this out if I don't do something, I better save myself. It's every man for himself now.
But as Jonathan Turley writes here, it's now time to see if a single Democratic member will stand against corruption and support an inquiry into the president's role and later cover-up of this corruption. That includes the use of White House staff to spread false claims and attack critics.
Okay.
He said one of the false narratives being bandied about is that there is no proof that the influence peddling Biden's son and brothers benefited the president himself. Thus, the argument goes, even though he was the subject of the influence peddling, Joe Biden did not legally or constitutionally benefit from the payments to constitute bribery or other crimes. This is utter nonsense. Yeah. The courts have repeatedly found that benefits to family members, far more modest than the millions in this case, can constitute bribery for a politician. That has also been the position of the Justice Department in past cases, regardless of whether Hunter or his associates were speaking truthfully about handing over percentages of these funds to Joe Biden. He practically and legally benefited from the millions going to his family. Even if members insist that they are not yet convinced, it makes no sense to insist that there is no direct evidence while opposing efforts to establish such evidence. These members have opposed any investigation into the allegations from the start. Polling suggests most people believe there was a massive influence peddling operation built around Joe Biden and that the president lied about not knowing about these deals. It is now time to get answers directly from the key players, from Hunter Biden to the president himself. There is more at stake for the members than a Democratic president. The Democratic Party has already embraced censorship and abandoned its long advocacy of free speech. That's absolutely true. Democrats are now running on the pledge to expand censorship on social media. The question is whether, as a party, it will now vote to shield and censor corruption, even with almost half of Democratic voters calling for answers. And that's where we are right now.
Look, we can take, your question about Weiss and apply it, to a theory about Democrats, especially long-serving Democrats. I've been saying that I believe those are the Democrats that are at risk for having a lot of this fall on them if they were in office when a lot of this was going on. But how long do you stand your ground in defense of Joe Biden when he is clearly not the future of the party? And I can't answer that question. Only they can. Only those members of the Democratic Party can do that. And when you see it, when you see those numbers, the overwhelming majority of people saying, something shady going on with the Bidens, then either you want to get out of office and you don't care about your political future, or at some point you have to start making that turn saying, yeah, you know what? We'll let the GOP lead the inquiry and look into what's going on, and maybe I'm not an active part of it, but I'm not going to stand up against it. I guess we'll see if that happens.
And you look at it, for Weiss, remember that the stuff that Weiss allowed to lapse was the stuff of the Ukrainian gas company, Burisma.
Yeah.
And that's where, remember, the whole Trump impeachment was based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And now we know what happened there.
Right.
And he goes, mostly because Wife's sock puppet indictment now conceals what his behavior was in allowing more serious charges against Hunter, huge payments to Hunter from the Ukrainian gas company. Burisma, for example, could have shown had not they been rendered moot by the passing of the statute of limitations. Weiss has never explained why he allowed that to happen. And the lapdog press has not pressed the issue. Recent testimony of IRS whistleblowers suggests that wasn't an accident. Investigators stonewalled.
Yeah.
It's not over yet.
Nope.
But this doesn't help with the vote coming up this week, the impeachment inquiry vote.
No. I think it only makes it a lot worse.
Like I said, I think the fallback argument now by Democrats, does any Democrat really believe this? Because this is the fallback argument. Does any Democrat listening right now actually believe that the entire Biden family was corrupt, was using Joe Biden and telling foreign governments and entities relating to intelligence agencies of foreign adversary governments that we will get Joe to do these things if you give us the money? And then they did it multiple times for tens of millions of dollars, distribute that money to all different family members. Joe got nothing. Joe didn't know anything about it. And the entire Biden family was corrupt in using old Joe. And the media looks at this family as a loving family.
Love is love. That's garbage.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara, reading Roger Campbell's column in American Greatness here. I think there's a couple of things going on in the background. One thing is that Biden is getting a little nervous that his son-of-a-gun number one son might just toss him under the bus should the DOJ pursue its case against Hunter with even moderate ferocity. Hunter does not seem like the sort of chap to take the fall, even to save dear old dad. I love that possibility. The other thing playing out in the background, and it's brought to us courtesy of the people who really run the country, the bureaucrats and the DOJ, State Department, and other nooks and crannies of the deep state. That's what the mysterious hand wrote on the wall. The puppeteers running Joe Biden can interpret the signs as well as the next soothsayer. Biden is history. If I were writing the screenplay for a new version of The Godfather, I think it would include, or I would include an offer Joe couldn't refuse. Drop out of the race for president at the time we appoint, and we'll find a way to drop or sweep under the carpet the charges against Hunter. That the bureaucrats are running it. The bureaucrats are running the government, so they just tell Biden, you get out, and we won't go after your son. I love it.
Yeah.
We'll find a way to sweep under the carpet. Persist, and we, too, with the possibility of a severed horse's head amongst the bedclothes in the form of revelations against you, Joe Biden of Scranton, Pennsylvania. What would follow then would be the glare of press curiosity about Joel's role in all those financial transactions, and you know where that leads. But
yeah,
that's speculation, of course.
Yeah. You think?
But if you've been paying attention, you know that it's not mere speculation.
It's speculation, but not really.
Oh, my.
That's funny.
Oh, my, oh, my. But as I've said all along, I think the one thing that people are missing, because it's, this is about impeachment. I don't know if it's about impeachment. I think it's about impeachment. I think it's about asking the questions when you have 70% of the people already suspicious right now.
I think it's about telling the story.
That's what I think it is, too. I think it's more important to tell the story and weaken him.
Yep.
I still don't think the majority of Republicans actually want to try to have an impeachment vote against Biden.
I don't think that's the goal at this point.
Yeah, I don't see that at this point.
I think it's to tell the story. If they present evidence that is so damning, you may not even need to get to an impeachment vote. But I don't know that they're going to get there. I mean, I don't know between now and November 5th. They're going to finish all of this up. There's just so much to get through. I don't know that they would get to that point. Then again, you look at everything that we have learned just this year alone, and it's already pretty damning.
The beautiful thing, because we've talked about, the Republicans haven't communicated effectively on all the other issues, but with inflation, you really don't have to communicate that, do you?
No, you don't. That's one thing we don't have to worry about the GOP screwing up. Inflation's going to do the job on its own, right?
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. So what I saw this weekend was everybody was really quiet about the whole charges against Hunter Biden relating to Joe. I didn't see any kind of defense of Joe. Did you?
I really didn't.
No.
It was quiet on that front. And before the charges came across, I guess I kind of expected that things were going to go quiet during December. Don't give the GOP any attention with the vote coming up and everything else. Just kind of, last week, what he say? It's all lies, blah, 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 blah. But then when the charges hit, I thought, okay, they're going to have to be out in full force. It was nothing.
Nothing.
Well, we're back to work today. I mean, you try and continue the silence? I don't think you can. I don't know, but I don't know where they go, except it's an ongoing investigation, blah, 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 blah. We're not going to comment on blah, 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 blah.
Well, now we officially know that, according to Biden's Department of Justice,
mm-hmm.
that money flowed from the Chinese and other foreign entities to Hunter Biden, distributed to the family, and some of that money got to Joe Biden.
Right.
Now they're saying, okay, he was just loaning money. And think about this. All Joe was doing was loaning money to everybody, and they were still ripping him off.
Right.
The entire family is corrupt. That's the fallback. That's what I think is amazing is nobody's actually talked about what the fallback position is when you communicate it. By communicating that Joe knew nothing and it was simply the illusion of influence, what it shows because of all the bank accounts and all the LLCs is everybody in the Biden family was screwing over Joe.
Right.
That's their fall. That's the Democrats' fallback position and the media's fallback position. Everybody was screwing over Joe. He had no idea what was going on. Even when he was vice president, he had no idea what was going on.
Right.
And he was being ripped off by Hunter and Jim. His brothers were ripping him off. His son was ripping him off. All of his family was benefiting from him being ripped off Now, this has nothing to do with Joe being generous because Joe didn't know about any of this.
Right.
So was the entire Biden family screwing over Joe Biden? In the family that loves him and he loves them, because this is all about love. Nothing. I think you might be able to justify throwing a little greed in there too.
Oh, the love of money.
The love of it was love.
Love is love.
It was a love of money.
But somebody brought up over the weekend too. In fact, I saw it in a few places. These people were well off. Why did they need loans from Joe? They were clearly making a lot of money. Why did he need to loan them a dime? Why did I almost go into Keith Morrison? Why would he lend them a dime?
And that's what makes me the timing politically. I mean, legally, who knows where it'll go? I don't know what's going to be released. But politically, it's bad. Politically, the timing was bad because now the impeachment inquiry is coming up. Democrats got to be scrambling. Okay, how do we defend not voting for an impeachment inquiry?
But it is bad. But, that question that you asked about Weiss earlier, I think that if you, apply that as theory, look, is Weiss basically, is this a whole CYA thing? I've been saying, you and I have talked about it all along, that one of the things there is that they don't know, even the Bidens don't know what the GOP has. They don't know what a whistleblower is going to say. They don't know what they may have found. They don't know what the GOP still has that hasn't been divulged so far. And that would include Weiss. And so if you get to the point where, at the very least, and again, we're just asking questions off of the question you asked about Weiss, could this be a CYA thing? Look, I'd like to have a career in the future. I don't want to go down with the Biden ship. But if you look at it and say, all right, if you apply that, at the very least, they're going to get to a vote. They get to a vote. And if Johnson says he has the votes, then this whole thing could implode, and I don't want to go down. Or there's word leaking out on Capitol Hill about what they may be able to present or go after, right, and try and prove. And Weiss is looking at it that way. Either way, it's basically the CYA approach, and I think that's a sound theory. And it would make sense because you and I both thought the same thing. Well, man, the timing is really horrible. Why after all this time? I mean, the evidence has been there. Why now?
Well, we know, for example, that they let the statute of limitations go on the Burisma scandal, the Burisma corruption,
right,
and the money that came from Burisma, which is the reason, when Trump pointed it out, that's where that's to Zelensky, that's where the whole impeachment came. And you and I have always asked this question. Did somebody start the impeachment because they knew was the goal to start the impeachment because they knew he was getting too close? And here's the thing. Here's how you know that both Ray last week, that Ray and Merrick Garland are lying when they say, well, why did Weiss let the statute of limitations pass? Well, we don't know that. What do you mean you don't know? Why did it happen? Well, we can't say anything because the investigation's still continuing. No, it's not.
No.
That investigation's not continuing.
Right.
You can come clear and tell the American public why you chose not to prosecute Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
On the whole Burisma scandal. Mm-hmm. You can be clear about this. Got nothing to do. You've dropped those charges. Can't be filed.
Right.
This next investigation is something different. We're not asking about that investigation. Well, the investigation's ongoing. No, it's not. You're lying.
Right.
That investigation is not going. You just can't come up with the correct answer because we know what the answer is. The Department of Justice was protecting Joe Biden.
Yep.
What other answer is there?
Right.
Because when you say you can't answer it because the investigation's going on, that's a lie. That investigation's done. That's over with. That's got nothing to do with the charges here. The Department of Justice and Weiss could come out and say, here's why we decided not to prosecute and let the statute of limitations pass.
Right.
The reason they won't do it is because they know why they did it.
Exactly. There's no way to explain otherwise.
No, there is no way to explain it. Otherwise, you would.
Right.
Because there's nothing keeping you. This whole thing, it's a lie. When Ray said it last week, it's a lie. Well, the investigation's going on. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
That investigation's over. You can't charge him with that. That's
Right.
over.
Right.
You can tell the American public why you decided on those charges not to prosecute. That's got nothing to do with the charges in the case that have been filed now.
Right.
Nothing to do with it.
Right.
They're lying about it. Well, we have to be extra careful. You're lying, Ray. He was lying.
Yep.
He knows it. Everybody knows it.
Because the moment you start talking about it, you have to talk about why you did it.
Yeah. And it's such an egregious thing that they did. I think Weiss now is saying, okay, I need to cover my posterior.
I need to get myself clear of this because
Right.
there's no way this isn't going to fall there.
And so
if the GOP is going to do their job, if they're look, they inch, every day they get closer and closer and closer. And that's why the goalpost is changing. And that's my whole point about, them, if the rest of if the Democrats, if Biden, nobody knows what the GOP may have right now that hasn't already been divulged or what they may find. So you just deny up until this point. With every new thing, then you deny it, that part of it, which is why the goalpost moves. Oh, well, that and blah, blah, blah. Well, I thought you didn't know anything about his business. Yeah, but blah, blah, blah. And you're just answering things as they come to the surface and they're divulged. And if you're Weiss, you're thinking, okay, there's no way. And that's the thing, too, is that Weiss looks at it and probably looked at Ray repeatedly and said, I can't win this, and I could be the fall guy.
Yeah. You're right. Yep.
If I'm the fall
Yep.
guy, which would be typical in this case,
Right.
in a case like this, Ray's not going to be the fall guy.
No.
Merrick Garland's not going to be the fall guy.
Yeah, but they're lying.
Exactly.
They're still lying.
They're lying, but if Weiss moves and says, all right, I got to do something, then maybe he's looking at it going, I'm not going to take the fall because it's looking more and more like somebody is, and everything would point to me. It has to be a key player, but it can't be the top brass.
Because nobody confronted that I saw Ray with this specific response as I would.
Right. Yeah.
You say you can't answer
Right.
this question because an investigation is ongoing. That investigation is not ongoing.
That's already
investigation. You decided. The Department of Justice decided to let the statute of limitations run out
right
on those charges.
Right.
And we know there was just as much evidence now. There was just as much evidence then to charge him as there is evidence now
exactly.
to charge him on what they're charging him now.
Exactly.
And so we know this. But your Department of Justice, the Department of Justice decided not to do it. Why can't we get an answer as to why they would not file charges on Hunter Biden, why they let the statute of limitations run out? It's not going to affect him on anything else.
No.
You're simply telling us why you did something that he can't be charged with it now because you allowed it to run out. And if you can't answer me this question, it means you're lying to me.
Exactly.
That it's not about the investigation.
You won't answer the question because once you start talking about it, you have to say why you did it. By the way, it would also apply to the question, well, wait a minute. Why was it so quiet over the weekend? Did Weiss just shock everybody inside the Beltway? Did this move, was this something nobody saw coming? And it was, and if Weiss is trying to pull a CYA. And really, at that point, he'd be on his own, because if he feels like, man, they're about to cut me loose, I'm going to be in my own little rowboat out here, and I'm going to be the fall guy.
There was really no leaks on this, was there?
There wasn't. Nothing. I didn't see this coming. I don't know anybody that did. I point to anybody in the media, anywhere, that said, yeah, this was, as we wrote here, or as so-and-so commented here, this was likely to. No. It was a shock.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly. I'm Gary McNamara. I've just read the headline here. National Review, this headline, The Incoherence of Taylor Swift. Her getting now involved in talking the issues. Oh, my God. But I was looking at foxnews.com, the front page.
Yeah.
7 articles on the Kansas City game, 3 involving Taylor Swift, 1 Brittany Mahomes.
All right.
So there were 3 on 3 on Taylor Swift, 1 on Brittany Mahomes, and 3 on the controversial so-called offsides call in the game. This is Fox.
Yeah.
Not TMZ, not even the New York Post. I think they're looking at the New York Post going, maybe there's something there. Let's be more tabloid. But the whole thing on Taylor Swift speaking the issues about the patriarchy and how she was how her one album was goth punk, and that was the one that drove the guy over. What are you talking about?
Punk?
She's completely incoherent.
Does she even know what either of those genres
I
are?
have no, apparently not.
Goth
Punk.
punk?
Yes.
Wow.
I know. So, well, we'll touch on that. Oh, how much of a deficit is California projected to have this year? $68 billion now.
And the companies and taxpayers keep leaving.
Yep.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, he is Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning.
Hillary
Thank you for being
2024.
you know you're in tough shape, Biden. It's the story out there that they've called on Hillary Clinton to help promote Biden. I'm like,
well, if there's anyone who can deny everything, it's Hillary.
Hey, the other thing I wanted to mention is, because it's obvious, but it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how all the whistleblowers were criticized by the Democrats?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If it wasn't for the whistleblowers, Hunter Biden would have never been indicted.
Right.
And
that's a good point.
And this whole thing would not be moving on. Remember,
yeah,
they were just demonized by Democrats like you can't believe.
Yeah,
and they were right.
Yep.
They were right all the way. Republicans need to make that. It'd be interesting to see how Republicans come out, because Republicans should come out extremely strong this week.
Yeah.
And know what the arguments are, because the Democrats don't have an argument right now.
Right.
But the whistleblowers are the reason. The whistleblowers are the only reason that Hunter Biden is being indicted, that the truth has finally come out, and the Department of Justice was forced to do what obviously was the right thing to do, and that's to go after somebody who is evading their taxes.
Yep.
Think about this, though. Now, we've actually got to this point now. It's the two things that Americans hate most: politicians who evade taxes and influence peddling. Think about that. That's the way, with everything that's gone on, with everything that Democrats have accepted and the left has accepted.
Yeah.
Anti-Semitism, identity politics, judging people by groups and not as individuals, open borders, the insanity of what they wish to do for the grid and electric vehicles and everything else. Open borders, defund the police.
Yeah.
No cash bail.
Yeah.
All the insanity they've been able to sell. The one thing you can't sell Americans on is politicians not paying their taxes and influence peddling. And now you've got both.
Listen, Joe Biden can do it all.
Well,
just give him time. And he's had a lot of that.
But I burst out laughing when I saw that story. Democrats now call in Hillary Clinton to help prop up the Biden campaign. Like, oh, my God.
Yeah, it's so funny. I wonder how many of the rank and file remember. Hillary Clinton is a former Secretary of State. The former First Lady as well. I just think of this as it just seems like 23 is the burning down of the Democrats' agenda, just dissolving as it was always going to do. I just didn't know it was going to happen within a couple of months. When the thing came across with Hunter over the weekend, and you and I have been going over it throughout the show this morning. But when the indictments came down, it was like, okay, what's going on here? Are they trying to protect Joe? Are they trying to protect Hunter, or both? And the more I think about it, I think the more the theory is a possible theory is that Weiss is looking to CYA, and he saw what's coming. All the evidence was there. But the question is, how does a Hillary Clinton help this? She doesn't. That's the last person I would bring in. Hell, I'd call Mitt Romney. Long before I would call Hillary Clinton. And it just seems right now, well, no, I mean, it's very simple. That's how desperate they are. Hey, let's call someone to help us with some baggage.
Now, wait a minute.
Okay.
This is a woman that knew how to move money through a foundation, though.
Oh,
That's it.
look, we got somebody. We got the queen of baggage.
Unbelievable.
We'll bring her right on in. So it makes perfect sense.
I thought that was so funny. It was like, wow, you've really run. Hillary may come out and say, "Look, I'm really your only choice."
It was going on social media. It was like, okay, it's clear now when that story started to surface. Oh, so this is what they're going to do. kid Slick out in California didn't get it done against DeSantis. He failed miserably. So
Kid Slick.
I'm giving them all.
Slick.
I'm giving them all comic book nemesis names.
Governor
Kid Slick didn't get it done. So who do we do? I don't know. Who's left?
Oh, my God.
Hillary? Are you sure?
Right. Hillary's going to try to prop up the Biden campaign. When she can't do it, then she's going to run.
Yeah.
Forget
and that was what was floating around, is that he'll step down and say it's because of health reasons, and Kamala Harris will say she doesn't want to run, and then Hillary will just slide right in. Hillary Cuomo 2024.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Because, by the way, if you're asking me right now, who in the party, in the event that Biden was to step down and decide, I'm not running, because I believe it will take that. It would take that, or an actual serious health condition. It would take him announcing he's not going to run. No one's going to nudge him out of that. But if he were to decide that and he didn't run, Kamala didn't run, well, tell me who else. Because I don't think the DNC is going to entertain what the RNC is doing right now, and that is kind of a primary season. But Trump is the nominee. I think for Hillary, it's going to be, look, you guys just kind of usher me in or not. Remember the whole thing with Bernie back in 2016. Okay, look, he's on fire out west. We'll just let him do that. It'll burn out. And we learned that from the leaked emails from the DNC. He was never going to be the nominee. Remember the Bernie supporters at the convention. And so if that theory, by the way, I know how out there this theory is. But then again, kids are chanting, I am Hamas on university campuses. So don't say I'm out there or radical or saying something bizarre, because everything is bizarre right now. Hillary Clinton could, she'd be the one. I guess it's really more of a question. Who else? Because you and I tried to, after the whole debacle, the debate between DeSantis and Kid Slick, it didn't happen. It was shot down in flames. Wasn't going to happen. That was the end of that whole thing. And the euphoria over Newsom was out. So who's left? It's Hillary.
Hillary. Yeah.
It's Hillary.
And they say people don't want to see a Biden-Trump election.
Right.
Try a Hillary-Trump election. Now, Kamala Harris would have to get out. But you talked about how crazy things are. And we talked about this weekend. It's like how everything you saw on all the issues, the president and his approval rating on specific issues, almost everything now is a negative 70%, which is just unheard of. I don't remember on so many issues where a president, which again, then you have to look at and say the political party, because the political party fully supports the president on all those issues.
Yeah.
And we said it's just getting to the point of insanity, to the point of insanity where I can't tell whether something is real or not. And this goes to I saw this yesterday, James Woods posted it, and it was Kamala Harris. Now, I didn't see at the bottom. I just said, well, let me play this, because it says a heartbeat away from having her finger on the nuclear button. And I played this, and I got about 10 seconds through, and I said, I think this is parody. And it ended up being a parody. They digitally altered, what she was actually saying. But the problem is, when something is so bizarre and you're really not sure and you have to check to make sure that it isn't real.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was not real, and it was from Vice President Kamala Harris, the site Barely Parody, which makes a great point. But when you hear this, I mean, it's hilarious, and it's digitally altered. But the fact is, I wasn't sure. I sensed it was fake, but I wasn't sure. Here it is. All right. Okay.
All right.
Today is today. And yesterday was today yesterday. Tomorrow will be today tomorrow. So live today. So the future today will be as the past today as it is tomorrow.
So I'm listening to that going, nah, nah, she can't even get. And then I looked down and it was like, okay, readers added context. A video clip has been digitally altered.
Yeah.
The original video was recorded at a rally for reproductive freedom in April of 2023, which we actually did use.
Yeah.
What she actually said at that.
Right.
And it was still,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so a lot of that, but it wasn't so close together.
Right.
It was more spread out over a period of minutes.
Right.
Not put into a 22-second clip.
It's so funny, though.
But when you're not sure, that's a problem.
That's the
when you're
problem.
not sure.
When you believe it, oh, yeah, no, that's her. That's her, yeah. That's totally her. It's just, it is so bizarre. This is probably the first Christmas season in a long time where I'm, I'm totally in the spirit. Everything's going great. It's, and I love this time of year, but I'm so anxious to get into 24. I am so anxious to get into 24. And part of it is, it's a very, serious in nature, of course, because so much is on the plate. But it was an encouraging weekend watching the Penn President step down. I think that's only scratching the surface, by the way. And the story was out. Some of the students at UPenn say, yeah, there's still a lot to be done.
Oh, we'll get to it. But just since you mentioned it, just I never got to when we were talking about it earlier, but the Wall Street Journal editorial on it, which hits exactly the points we did, but in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah.
We'll get to that coming up. 866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller & Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We had talked about this earlier, but then you just reminded me, and I thought about the Wall Street Journal, one of their lead editorials from yesterday. Mm-hmm. The Ivy League mask falls. Anti-Semitism is one example of a much deeper rot on campus. The furor over anti-Semitism on campus is a rare and welcome example of accountability at American universities, but it won't amount to much if the only result is a resignation of a couple of university presidents. The great benefit of last week's performance by three elite school presidents before Congress is that it tore the mask off the intellectual and political corruption of much of American of the American Academy. The world was appalled that these academic leaders, when asked if advocating genocide against Jews violated their codes of conduct. But the episode merely revealed the value system that has become endemic at too many prestigious schools. The presidents of MIT, Harvard, and University of Pennsylvania hid behind concerns about free speech. But as everyone paying attention knows, these schools don't protect free speech. They disagree with, they punish it. Harvard President Claudine Gay had presided over the ouster of professors for speech that violated progressive mindsets. As Elise Stefanik wrote on these pages on Friday, Harvard's Title IX training says using the wrong pronouns qualifies as abuse. Harvard was 248th out of 248. Penn was 247th in the annual college ranking by the Free Speech Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. But because Jews in Israel are seen in the progressive canon as white oppressors and colonizers, it's not a clear campus violation to call for murdering of Jews because it depends on the context. The three presidents have apologized for or moderated their comments before Congress, but that was only after the political consequences became clear. Believe what they said the first time. That is what their institutions stand for. And that's true.
Yep.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
These aren't children you're dealing with. The resignations of the Penn president and Board of Trustees chairman are best understood as attempts to placate angry donors. That's fine as far as it goes, but if accountability ends there, nothing else will change. And it's true.
Yep.
But it does give you an understanding that it's not a few radical students or professors. It goes right to the top management.
Yep. These are the people that are setting the tone for the entire campus.
Yep.
And we see it. It's why those students were able to get away with it. It's why you see such radicals. They boldly and proudly promote their radical agenda. And you saw this with university presidents and the questioning by Stefanik and their defiance. You could see it on their face.
Yeah.
Well, a society will only tolerate that kind of radical behavior for so long. And I'm glad that she had to step down, the UPenn president, over the weekend, and I hope this continues. I hope the alumni of the schools will withhold every single dollar until big change comes about.
Gary McNamara and Eric Harley taking your calls. 1-866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I don't know if I can get through this.
Okay.
I really don't know if I can get through this.
All right, let's see.
Now, I'd mentioned before that when going through FoxNews.com last night, in fact, I looked at it an hour ago and it was still the same. Might have changed, but as of an hour ago, there were 7 stories on the front page. Not one, not two. 7 stories on the Kansas City game yesterday. I won't even include the other team in there because they don't really mention the other team except for the penalty call. But of the 7 stories, the majority are not about the game, but 3 are the reactions of Taylor Swift being there, and 1, Brittany Mahomes. So 7 stories. And I guarantee if Taylor Swift wasn't a part of it, there might have been one story.
Yeah.
But that brings us to, and we had chuckled last week because, look, we've said it a long time ago, the whole Person of the Year thing is meaningless, but she doesn't fit the definition that they set for it. And the vast majority of people that I saw on social media, and even over the weekend, have no idea that it is not an award.
Yeah.
It's like, congratulations for getting, it's like people are completely clueless.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, they might as well just change the name.
Yeah.
Most Amazing Person of the Year or something.
People's Choice Awards.
Yeah. There you go.
At least that's, well, the people choose it, whatever. It's based on nothing. But this is just, I read this. I could not, and now this would be about like the third or fourth time I've read this because I keep getting such a kick out of it. And it was Abigail Anthony from National Review, The Incoherence of Taylor Swift. and she talks about, Person of the Year and all this, but it's the profile offered by Time on her that really just set her off.
Yeah.
But it's great stuff. The profile offers a glimpse of Taylor's intellectual side, like when she discovers supply and demand and what has existed since the dawn of time, a patriarchal society. What fuels a patriarchal society? Money, flow of revenue, the economy. So actually, if we are going to look at this in the most cynical way possible, feminine ideas become lucrative means that more female art will get made. It's extremely heartening. End of quote. That's a quote.
Yeah.
And then the author writes, we all know Swift as a musician, but apparently she's also an anthropologist, economist, and historian.
Yeah.
But surely someone so enlightened would reason that money, flow of revenue, and the economy fuel most societies, not only those that are supposedly patriarchal. National Review's Kayla Bartz had added that Swift's long list of titles by calling her a philosopher. Yet Taylor is plainly illogical, telling Time magazine, I've also learned there's no point in actively trying to, quote, unquote, defeat your enemies, and trash takes itself out every single time. Then the author writes, surely everyone knows that the trash never takes itself out, as much as we might wish otherwise. I suppose that if you have a net worth of $1 billion, then you have staffers who take out the trash for you, and you're accustomed to seeing an empty bin every morning. Ultimately, I was unimpressed with Swift's insights, not because they were unsophisticated, but because they were completely incomprehensible. She describes her Reputation album as a, quote, a goth punk moment of female rage at being gaslit by an entire social structure, adding that I think a lot of people see it and they're just like 6 snakes and strobe lights.
What?
I was perplexed.
What?
Is the album that I hear while in the CVS checkout line really goth punk? How exactly is female rage different from rage? What is the entire social structure that has gaslit her? And is the same one that made is it the same one that made her a billionaire? The characterization of her album is confusing because it doesn't convey anything at all. Aside from being unintelligible, her rhetoric doesn't make any sense. I wonder if Taylor asked GPT, what are some words the youths use? She said of her relatively new relationship, this all started when Travis very adorably put me on blast on his podcast, which I thought was metal as hell. Continued that we would never be psychotic enough to hard launch a first date. In response, I don't even, the hell does that even mean? In response to the attention she gets at football games, she states, I have no awareness of if I'm being shown too much. And the P word off a few dads, Brads, and Chads. She promises that upcoming songs will be fire. Just as her songs are repetitive, her speech is eerily formula-like. She tries to be the endearing girl next door, but outdated internet slang like metal as hell portrays her more as that weird cousin you're forced to chat with during holiday gatherings. So, and she continues to go on, but I was just dying laughing because it's like when you read it, you're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I know metal, and nothing she's ever seen or been associated with
is metal
as hell. Not even close.
Oh, my God.
Trying to buy street cred with words. There's a new approach. My gosh. Look, you're a billionaire.
Bring back the days of Grandma Gaga.
Just go on stage and do what you do. Your dress is bedazzled. It can't possibly be goth or punk. So stop it. Just stop it.
I'm sure Robert Smith is going to comment on that.
You just got more glitter than ever. Well, that's the thing. She's not wearing near enough makeup to be goth.
And I don't think the band members of The Cure are going to be backing her up anytime soon.
I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think that's going to happen. Listen, Robert Smith replied, her music is too depressing. Yeah, that Robert Smith.
I think Morrissey said the same thing.
Morrissey just called and said, oh, my gosh, I thought my music was depressing. I'm actually going to cry now.
Green Day said, huh?
Rob Halford from Judas Priest said, not even close to being metal as hell. Take that back, young lady.
Oh, my. Oh, we do live in a nation of idiots. We really do. I'm talking about the adoration towards her because as I told you from the very beginning, I don't get it. I don't begrudge her anything. I mean, if you can make $1 billion, make $1 billion.
I get the whole pop star thing.
Yeah, so do I.
But don't try and reinvent yourself while raking in, hundreds of millions of dollars on stage wearing sequins.
And that you're a victim.
If she can wear sequins on stage and be goth,
punk
and metal as hell, well, look out. The new Prince of Darkness, Porter Wagner.
Oh, my God.
If that's what it takes. My gosh. That's what annoys me. I don't begrudge anybody going out there and making $1 billion being a pop star. Okay, fine. But don't try and reinvent yourself on the fly and be hip and relevant in genres where you don't belong.
Look, the only pop star you could say truly reinvented themselves was Bobby Sherman.
Exactly.
Remember?
Right. Now, she'd come out and said, I'm dating Hunter Biden. That would be metal as hell.
Yes, that would be metal as hell.
He's got no shirt on. He's holding a gun. He's smoking crack.
Bobby Sherman
And she's standing there by his side. Okay.
Bobby Sherman became a legit paramedic firefighter.
Yeah.
I mean, he actually rose up in the ranks, I think, of the L.A. Fire Department.
I think he also was a law enforcement officer at one point, too.
Was he in law enforcement, too? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
From Here Come the Brides to all of his hit songs. He was monstrous.
Yeah. Can you imagine being pulled over by Bobby Sherman? It's like, dude, shut up. You're not giving me a ticket. Stop it. Been on the back in the day on every magazine cover.
And Eddie Haskell, he became a cop. He was shot.
Yeah, yeah. That must have been a bit of a challenge for either of them.
Yeah.
Because Eddie Haskell's the actor who played Eddie Haskell. His face didn't change, and either did Bobby Sherman's as they grew older. It'd be one thing, if they looked completely different and nobody recognized them. But, yeah.
Oh, Ken Osmond played Eddie Haskell.
Yeah.
Yes, Ken Osmond.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he sort of looked the same.
He looked the same.
Bobby Sherman, when picture I saw of him, you went, oh, wow, you still can see it.
Yeah,
I mean, he's older, but you can still see it. Go, Bobby Sherman.
Yeah, no, you would totally recognize it.
But I mean, what they did was metal as hell.
Yeah.
Dating Travis Kelce.
Not metal as hell. No. Not metal as hell.
I don't know why, but her labeling her album goth punk bothered me more than anything.
Yeah. It's like, what are you going for? Goth
punk. No.
Are you kidding me?
I might be interested in listening to it if it was truly goth punk, just to see where you went with it.
Yeah. You don't have enough. You can't buy enough rage, even with $1 billion. Person like that can't buy enough rage to be goth punk.
The new lead singer of Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah,
Taylor Swift.
There you go. My gosh, trying to buy the street cred thing, that just stop.
I know
You would actually do better in literally trying to buy the street cred. Taking the $1 billion and just giving it to people. Hey, would you comment on social media? Call me goth punk or something. You do better doing it that way, literally trying to buy street cred. Oh, my gosh.
I think she should be the goth punk person of the year.
Yeah. They ended that long ago.
Yeah, that award didn't last a long time.
They don't like being photographed.
Yeah, that award went from 1984 to 1992.
Pretty much. Pretty much. That was where it ended.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. The truth about net zero coming up following the top of the hour. And where is the Hunter Biden investigation going to go this week?
Yeah, wow.
And will there be an impeachment inquiry, and how will the Democrats respond? They've been very, very quiet over the weekend. The media, very, very quiet. Nobody talking about how this may relate to the impeachment inquiry.
This is going to be a big week.
It is.
This is really going to be a big week.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.